So our next talk will be a joint lecture. It will be given by Shrinivasa Varakhedi and Shrinivasa Kumar, Acharya. They are going to speak about the concept of God in Madhva's Tatva-vada. So I'm going to very briefly say something about them. So Professor Shrinivasa Varakhedi is currently serving as Vice Chancellor at Central Sanskrit University, India. Before that, he has been the Vice Chancellor of the following universities: Kavikula Guru Kalidas Sanskrit University, Gondwana University, and Karnataka Sanskrit University. They are all in India. His contributions towards interdisciplinary studies and research have acclaimed him several recognitions and awards, including the prestigious Maharishi Bradhayan Vyasam by the President of India in 2007. He works in the fields of natural language processing and Sanskrit computational linguistics, Indian philosophical and literary studies, in collaboration with several international scholars and institutions. With a rigorous training for around 17 years in Indian philosophy and Sanskrit studies, Professor Varakhedi is an accomplished scholar and a researcher who has edited more than 50 works and published equal number of research papers in Sanskrit, English, and Kannada. The Path of Proofs, a translation of Dvaita epistemology authored by him, was the first publication of Manipal University Press and has found place in shelves of universities such as Oxford, Harvard, and others. He has lectured in universities of Canada, USA, France, Belgium, Sri Lanka, and Thailand. In his turn, Professor Shrinivasa Kumar Acharya is an assistant professor and head of the Department of Philosophy at Manipal Academy of Higher Education, where he oversees an interdisciplinary research project of computational analysis using Sanskrit computational linguistics in digital humanities. He also serves as the Jean Monnet Center of Excellence, the Manipal Center for European Studies, the Department of Languages, and Manipal Universal Press. He pursues teaching and research in Indian discourses on ethics, epistemology, metaphysics, and linguistics. He's a beneficiary of the prestigious Erasmus Teaching Fellowship from the Universidad de Castilla-La Mancha at Spain. And he was invited to deliver talks at several European universities. He is also a co-recipient of the Indo-Canadian Shastri Grant with the University of Toronto, Canada, for the collaborative research on Indian dialectics and argumentation. So please, Professors Varakhedi and Kumar Acharya, now you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Thank you, God. Namaskar, good evening to everyone. At the outset, I would like to brief the outline of our presentation. Myself and Srinivasa Acharya present the doctrine of God in Tatva-vada, philosophy of Madhva. Madhva lived in 13th century in South India, and his entire philosophy focuses on the only one reality, that is God. The very idea of God, according to Madhva, is this: the God is the only infinite reality that pervades independently. What are the sources of knowing God? And in our talk, we will cover 4 to 5 points. As we heard the idea of God in Ramanuja's Siddhanta, Alvar's tenets. What we can do is we can show some of the differences that Madhva has shown in his school of thought, so that you will understand how the concept of God is different from the other Vaishnava schools. The sources of knowing God are, of course, it is only the one, which is Veda. And Madhva enumerates the sources as Veda, Upanishads, Puranas, and Pancharatra. Of course, Madhva is a strong Vaishnava who who believed and claimed that Pancharatra Agamas are very important sources for his idea of God. And of course, he begins with Anumana. Anumana is inference. He says everybody knows and has to accept the very existence of God just by his own experiences. For example, someone can say, if the whole world is experiencing some sort of pain, if I experience pain, I cannot say that I wish to experience pain. Nobody nobody would like to experience pain. Then if I'm experiencing pain, there must be some reason, and there must be something beyond my control. So that's where we must agree, we must accept, we must admit the existence of the God. So I think Srini Acharya will explain it in detail. And of course, God is perceivable. Pratyaksha Pramana is also admitted by Madhva in his sources. And we must also know about the definitions of God. Who is God? God is Saguna or Nirguna, both. He is Saguna as well as Nirguna. Saguna in the sense that he is full of all good virtues, good attributes. At the same time, he is Nirguna in the sense that he is not affected by any worldly gunas like sattva, rajas, tamas, prakrita gunas. He is not affected by any prakrita gunas. He is aprakrita. He is beyond this prakriti. And of course, all his qualities are identical with him. That's what I asked my question. I raised my question to the previous speaker. Unlike the Alva's theory, Madhva admits that all his qualities are identical with him. And he is blemishless. Now we should move to another point, which is very important point. What is the relation of God with the rest of the world? He is creator, he is controller, he is liberator. These three important aspects, functions of God, we should know, so that we can define his relation with the rest of the world. Another important point we would like to raise is here, God is the essence of the entire literature, Vedic literature. Not only Vedic literature, but each and every sound of a fall of water, sound of a vehicle, sound of any noise, and words and sentences just convey the existence of God. This is another important aspect that Madhva has exhibited. And the notion of God resolves all philosophical problems, all philosophical questions, questions like problems like karma siddhanta. For example, if we accept karma siddhanta, the theory of karma, the souls or the jivas who perform some activity all actions, all deeds generate some sort of merits or demerits, which are resulted uh, in turn in the form of our pain and happiness. Then the question is, why there is a sequence, there is an order of pain and happiness. Can I change this order? For example, if I perform some good deed, I may generate some merit, which may result later on certain point of time, which generates some happiness in me. And who decides the time of that result? Who fixes the timeline? So this sort of question is answered by Madhva by accepting this kind of notion of God. And we may resolve so many questions, philosophical questions, just by accepting the existence of God. So that the beauty of Madhva's theory is the very acceptance of God itself resolves so many issues. So these 4 to 5 points we are going to present. And I now request my colleague and friend Shrinivasa and Acharya to present through the presentation mode. Thank you very much. I will again come back for discussion.
Thank you, Professor Varakhedi. Namaste. Good evening, everyone. I would be continuing with where Professor Varakhedi has left. To continue at the outset, I would like to invoke Madhva's the first benedictory verse of Vishnu Tattva Nirnaya. So how he defines Vishnu.
Shri, you can
Let
start
me
your
run my screen.
Yeah.
You're going to share your screen?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, you see it.
Sadagamaika Vigneyam Samatita Ksharaksharam Narayanam Sada Vande Nirdosha Sheshasadgunam. Vishwesha Tirthaya Namo Namaste. So, as Professor Varakhedi introduced Ananda Tirtha Acharya Madhva, who lived in the 13th, 14th century, 1238 to 1317. He starts his work, Tattva-sangyana and Tatva-vada, two ontological treatises, categorizing the entire universe, and his categorization goes like this, that there are only two entities. That is why in many Madhva followers' house, we could see that Madhvacharya's photo, Acharya Madhva's photo will be holding two fingers above. So it's speaking about two entities that exist. One is the independent entity and another one is the dependent entity. And all these entities, his Madhva's dualism is different from the Cartesian dualism. I will speak how it is different from Cartesian dualism later. So in this entire, whatever the categories that exist in this universe, all of them are ultimately real, unlike Advaita. How do we say they are real? So the evidence is that our empirical observation of the universe itself is the testimony to the fact that they are ultimately real. Because we do not sublate each and every cognition that we have. We might sublate certain cognition, but not all the cognitions. And the very same cognition is also an evidence for us to prove that we exist. It's not, yes, of course, I think that's why, therefore I am, cogito ergo sum. Madhva also proposes another evidence, another experiential evidence to say that the existence of self or soul. That is, etavantam kalam sukhamaham aswapsam. So far happily I slept. In this cognition, all the cognitive senses and conative senses are inactive, and even the internal organ in the sound sleep, in the deep sleep, sushupti, the internal organ, that's mind, that is also inactive. Yet immediately after the sleep, there is an experience of the past. There is a recollection of the past, that is that I have slept so far peacefully. So I have experienced myself as well as that time and the bliss. So that is that the cognizer is the self. So this is how he proves that the self exists, that the sentient entity exists. And that sentient entity is distinct from insentient material. The material, he proposes this as any other Indian philosophers would do, except Charvaka. And the self, the existence of the self is nothing but consciousness, like all other Vedanta schools and unlike Nyaya school. And the self and the matter, they are subordinate, subservient, therefore they are classified as dependent entity, and they are infinite, and they are mutually distinct, also distinct from the independent entity. So this is precisely his philosophy. Now here we have to observe that there are two principles. That's not merely Prakriti and Purusha, it's also Purushottama. So there are three entities, but he has classified the Purushottama as independent entity and the rest of the Chetana and Achetana as one dependent entity. That is how his dualism is also slightly different from Sankhya. And yet he, like Ramanuja has said in his text, and his followers have explicitly said, that all the texts that are previous to his school of thought, wherever there is no contradiction to the ultimate truth, there is no, it is not contradicting the ultimate truth that is proposed by the Vedas, those parts are completely pramana. And as Professor Varakhedi pointed out, Madhva, according to him, all the Amnaya, Sadamnaya, the list that he gives as Mula Ramayana, Mahabharata, Pancharatra, and Ashtadasha Purana, and Smriti texts, and the portions of the text that are not contradicting with the Vedic worldview are ultimately truth. So he does not believe that portions of Vedas are Pramana and portions of Vedas are Tatva-vada. He says the entire Veda is absolutely Pramana, both the portions, that is the Jnana Kanda and the Karma Kanda. And according to Madhva, what is it, why it is different from the Cartesian dualism, is that it is, so even Sankhya, in that sense, Sankhya is also Pramana, because according to him, Sankhya was said none other than by Kapila, who is Vishnu himself. So the Cartesian dualism, in that the mind and matter are opposing principles, whereas here independent and dependent entities are real, but they are not opposing each other. One is subordinate to the other. So what is that independent entity? So he proposes a logical argument, so to say that there is an independent entity. That independent entity is, his argument in his devotional compositions is Yadinama paro nabhaveta harihi katamasya vashe jagade tadabhut Yadinama natasya vashe sakalam katamevatu nitya sukham nabhavet. So if one argues that there is no supreme independent entity, supreme being as such, then he questions, then how come the entire universe is subordinate, dependent to that independent entity? So one would counter argue that who said you that every entire universe is dependent to the independent entity? So he has critiqued the Andhapangunyaya, the blind and limp argument, where the limp sits over the blind and travels. So the matter, the Prakriti and Purusha themselves are enough capable to function. They don't need another entity. And also, like the milk curdles and ferments and becomes yogurt or curd. Similarly, that there is no need of another. So the matter, the world itself is capable of functioning, which he critiques. Both these arguments is critiqued in his text as that there has to be an intermediator to bring these two independent intermediator to bring these Andha and Pangu together, the blind and the lame. And also, Payovaditi says Sadhya Vaikalyam Syad Nidarshane. So he says that if there is no independent Purushottama, then this it cannot curdle by itself. Milk cannot curdle by itself. It needs a person who has to curdle. If not, it will become spoiled. So the universe is a very systematic universe, and this systematic universe is designed by someone, and that's why it's under, by nature, it is under someone's control. So he says, okay, if you say that it is not under someone's control, then his logical question is this, counter argument is this, then how come everyone wishes, everyone desires that they don't want any okay, I'll see now. So every one individual craves for that. They want to always experience bliss and they never want to experience any kind of sorrowness. Then why does this not happen? So he says, Katameva tu nitya sukham na bhavet. Why does everyone, an individual who's an experienced driver, has so many years of driving experience, why that person crashes? So his argument is that because we are unable to do whatever we want, whatever we desire, because there is, as Krishna in Bhagavad Gita has clearly presented, Adhishtanam tata karta karanancha pratakvidam vividascha pratak cheshta daivam chaivatra pancham. So there is an unseen divine force behind that's controlling. So Krishna says panchaitani karanani nebodhame. So who is that independent being? What is the nature? So he says in his Vishnu Tattva Nirnaya, where he is speaking about the Vishnu as the focus principle of his entire philosophy. So his Tatva-vada, his philosophy is known as Tatva-vada, named as Tatva-vada. So in Tatva-vada, the Tattva is Vishnu. So in his Vishnu Tattva Nirnaya, he says that the holistic cognition is only possible of Vishnu through Vedas. And he is above all, as Bhagavad Gita very clearly says. So in all Madhva's text, he reiterates the point, the Abhyasa technique, Asakrit Ucharanam. So he reiterates the point that Dvavimau Purusho Loke Ksharascha Akshara Evacha, Ksharas Sarvani Bhutani Kutastokshara Uchate, Uttama Purushastvanyaha Paramatme Tyudahartaha. So there are perishable and imperishable entities in the universe. The perishable is entire sentient and insentient creature, except the Chit Prakriti, that is Lakshmi, imperishable. So he is above Kshara, Akshara. He is above these two. He is Purushottama. Atosmi Loke Vedecha Pratita Purushottama is what Krishna states about the Purushottama entity, the independent being. He is, it is not like Nyaya, the soul, the self has consciousness. Self is consciousness. He is the form of all good qualities and immaculate. Imagine a religion, so Madhva school is also a religious and spiritual school of thought. So imagine a philosophy, a philosophy of religion is proposing the God as not something. Whatever you consider as a good quality and whatever is an absolute good quality, that is God. So it is not God is you. God has quality. God is quality. So you want ultimate unconditional love. That is God. So you want wisdom. That is God. So what is immaculate? What is blemishless? That good quality is God. That God, that Vishnu is omniscience, omnificent, omni-agent, omnipotent, omnipresent, and immanent. This is a very important concept in Madhva's thought. So in all rituals, that all Madhvas will always in their rituals, they will consider whatever the actions that they are doing, not just the ritual. Sarvendriyabhimani Shri Prana Samstena Vishnuna Prerita Sheshatakirtam Karishya Karma Chakilam. So any activity that they perform, any ritual that they conduct is propelled by the immanent, the one who exists inside me and inside everything. So that immanence of the God is a very important property, trait that Madhva philosophy proposes. And he is benevolent, merciful, he is super eminent and infinite. Deshataha, kalataha, gunataha. So spatially, temporally, and temperamentally, he is infinite. There is no, so we are infinite, but we are numerally infinite. So all the animate and inanimate entities, they are mutually distinct and they are infinite, but they are only infinite numerally. But God is temperamentally also infinite. And that is why he is an independent entity. He does not depend on someone for something. And he is only one. So in that sense, Madhva's thought also could be viewed as monotheistic thought, as any other Vedantic thought. And his consort is the conscious nature, who is also, as Madhva's follower Vadiraja Tirtha attributes similar to Vishishta Advaita. So Sarvagno, Sarvalankara Barito, Sarvagno, Sarvasatguno, Sarvadi Sarva Bhaktoga, Sarvaswadayako, Sumukho, Sundarataro, Sunaso Sukachittanu, Suraradita Padabjo, Rama Narayanostuma. So the Rama is equally capable in all these aspects. She is also equal. However, that equality has a gradation, that there is a variation between Rama and Narayana. So Narayana is infinite. So, and also one point that I've missed here is that Narayana is gender free. So that is why even Vishnu Sahasranama does not start as Vishnur Vishwam Vashatkaro. It starts as Vishwam Vishnur Vashatkaro. It starts from an Apumsakalinga, Vishwam. You cannot merely, because that is also a finitude. That is also, you are limiting God to one gender. You cannot say God is merely masculine or male or man or merely feminine or neuter. He is gender free. He does not have any kind of limitations at all. So next to the God, the first entity is, in that sense, the first sex is Lakshmi, who is Shri, Bhu and Durga. So in Vaishnava tradition, Durga is not Parvati, but Durga is Lakshmi herself. And of course, there are multiple gods, yet they are multiple deities or divine beings, but they are not God. God is only Vishnu, the independent entity. They are elevated souls, they are dependent, who have had realization of God. So each and every divine being is a position that one acquires over their accomplishment. They lead us to God. Now, what is his or her or its form? Every name in this universe, every sound in this universe, vocal or lingual, is a euonym. It is, God is the super primary denotative, Parama Mukhya Vritti. The relation between the word and meaning is called Vritti, signification. So the signifier and signified relation. So he is the primary denotative, Parama Mukhya Vritti. Every word, Srini, whatever I speak, every single sound at a character level, at a word level, at a sentence level, even a mere sound, a vocal sound, is also denoting the God. So that's what he says in his Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Sarve Nadaha, Sarve Doshaha, Sarvaha Rachaha, Prana Racha Ityava Vidya. So everything denotes the Supreme Being, glorifies the Supreme Being. So it denotes, he can be denoted by any name or term. So you cannot limit God. So whatever you consider, whatever form you consider as independent entity, that is God. So you can call him by even other religious terms, interreligious terms. You can call God by the name of Allah, Jesus Christ, or the names of all Abrahamic traditions, or even non-Abrahamic traditions, or the traditions of other continents and cultures. So any name that you use to refer to the independent absolute entity, that is God. And the God is the innermost essence. That is what immanence means of all objects or entities or things. This is not the pantheism, the pantheistic view. It's different. Okay, the slide is not appearing. Just to give me I think it's stuck. Okay. So a good example, my mentor, my Guruji, Periyavaru Swamiji, Vishweshatirtha Swamiji, he who taught us for many years, many of the Nyaya and Dvaita texts. He's no more. He used to give this example that a mother looks at a child asks mother, looking at a coconut tree, what is that? The thing that lies in the tree that's green in color. So his mother says that's coconut. The child asks, I want to see it. Then the mother breaks and gives. Then the child asks, what is that another yellow thing that is there inside, hard? She says, that is coconut. What is that you ripped off? That is the peel. Then the child asks, I want to see it. Then the mother breaks it and shows the innermost kernel and says the outside, what she just broke, is also the nut, the peel of the nut. So the coconut, the word denotes not the outermost layer or the inner layer, but it denotes the innermost kernel. So every word denotes, that is why it's called super primary denotative. It denotes the innermost essence of the entities. He is any form of sound, that is lingual or vocal, as I said earlier, is remarks the Supreme Being. He has various forms and incarnations, and he is identical to all those. He is not different from Rama and Krishna and Vishnu. So when Rama came, it is not that the Krishna did not exist. There is no temporal finitude as well. So he is there at all times. Only the manifestation happens at certain time. It's not that he did not exist. He exists in the same form. And it is not that he needs a weapon to kill his enemies. It is not that he needs an external trait like his benevolence. His benevolence is him. His consciousness, him. So he is identical to his traits. So here Madhva brings a very interesting concept called the concept of peculiarity, Vishesha, which is an inseparable entity to the substance. It is the substance itself, yet it helps us to distinguish its traits and actions. So Vishesha is not only exists in the God, it exists in every ontological category in Madhva's metaphysics. He is absolute, meaning complete, clear, and perfect, meaning that he is immaculate, meaning that he is infinite traits of goodness and he is blemishless. His form is immaterial. It is beyond. That is why it's told in Gita, he is beyond Akshara or Prakriti. He is transcendental, natural in that sense, and original in that sense. So in that sense, he is Upadana Karana, not exactly in the sense that it is said in Vishishtadvaita. His form is consciousness and blissful, as Vedanta says. The very important aspect of God is that 8 agencies, Ashtakartritva. So as Bhagavata Purana and Brahma Sutra, when it starts the inquiry of who is Brahma, so the very next term that it says is Janmadhyasya Yataha. That is the creation, sustenance, destruction, regulation, wisdom, ignorance, bondage, and emancipation. When he's speaking about creation and destruction, he's very close to his Madhva considers Vishnu and his forms as identical, and yet his mentor, his teacher. So the Kapila, the one who proposed Sankhya school of thought, so he is very close to his metaphysics when it comes to creation and destruction, is very close to Sankhya. The creation is not that you bring out something that altogether did not exist. So a very good example is given in Bhagavata Purana. So creation is nothing but transformation of micro materials into macro form. And destruction is not that you annihilate something completely. No, it is the transformation of the macro form into its original micro form. And sustenance is a very interesting concept that what Madhva says. It is Dravyam karmacha kalascha swabhavo jiva evacha yadanugrahata santi nasanti adupaiksya. So his preservation is that every single entity in all its aspect, as Jayatirtha pointed out in his Tattva-sankhya Tika, Swarupa, nature, Pramiti, cognition, or if you want to say it is valid cognition, in that sense knowledge, or Pravritti, because Pravritti means knowledge or valid cognition, and Pravritti, engagement. In all its form, an entity that does not require another entity to perform is what is called independent. So the entire universe is sustained by Vishnu, inside and outside. He is omnipresent. And his regulation, very interesting concept. If we want to critique what kind of God is Vishnu, does he, if I don't follow him, will he punish me? Will he make me a Gentile? Will he make me a kafir? No. In his regulation, he harmonizes. He never discriminates. So this is very well explained in Nadatte kasyachit papam nachaiva sukritam vibhu nakarma palasanyogam swabhavastu pravartate. It's not you are my devotee, please come to my temple. I will give you prasadam, blessings. You are not my devotee, I hate you. No. God is a form of all good qualities. There is no form, he does not have any kind of hatred. He is a systematizer. He never comes out of the system. So what you do, Kuru Bhungshva, that is what Madhva's philosophy is all about. Whether you do for yourself or for the other, Parasmai Pada is used there. So those who are interested in linguistics can understand this interesting term that Madhva uses. And Bhungshva, so you reap the fruit. You do it for other also, you will be also, like for example, if I'm teaching, yes, of course, the student is learning, but also at the end of the day, I'm also learning, I'm also getting the salary. So every action that I do, I eat. So the person who has cooked is happy. Their food is exhausted. If I cook myself also in that sense. But at the end of the day, it's giving me health, it's giving me happiness and so on. So you also will reap the fruit of your action. So it is you whose swabhava, that is nature, innate nature. So Madhva is an innatist. And his yogyata, ability, because of these two, one is capable of doing good or bad or whatever. Of course, there is some sort of, there are moral relativists who would say morality is relative term, but there is a problem. When we say child abuse or any other form of such heinous crimes, they cannot be justified in any point of time or any point of space, including slavery. They cannot be justified. They are absolutely morally wrong to discriminate. So Madhva's hierarchy or Madhva's gradation, Taratamya, does not say that. He says equal treatment of all is discrimination. Unequal treatment of, when he says unequal treatment, he does not mean to say that you should discriminate someone. He means to say that you have to give what the one who deserves. There is a teacher who wants to be good in front of students, and that teacher does not want to score anyone less or more, wants to score everyone 99, 99, 99. So the 100 students are in the classroom of that teacher scores only 99 because the teacher does not want to displease someone. That's not the role of the God. The God's role in Madhva's philosophy, as it's told in 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, is that the entity, God is like a farmer. Oh, this is apple tree. It is reaping sweet fruit. Or this is mango. It's a bitter gourd tree. It reaps bitterness. Or it's a chili tree. It reaps spicy edible product. I don't want spicy in the world. I don't want salt or bitter in the world. I will make everything sweet. That becomes monotony. That becomes boring. No one would cherish the world. That is why Madhva says in his devotional composition, Bahuchitra Jagat Bahudakaranat Parashakti Ananta Guna Paramaha. So this is very well pointed out in
Professor Acharya, I'm really sorry to interrupt you, but we have only 5 minutes left.
Okay, fine. Yeah, I will complete. So so in this Vaishamya Nirgranyadikarana also, he has very explicitly interpreted that God is the one who facilitates, does not do something of his own system as such. And how to reach him? The universal desire for emancipation. So is that one experiences oneself, which also Jonathan Ganeri, as my colleague had pointed out, unconcealment is emancipation. So you experience yourself is emancipation. And this is only possible through knowledge of God, that is devotion and grace. So I wanted to speak a little bit about on this, but I will go ahead. The devotion is pure unconditional love. It's it's nourished with wisdom of significance of any. So if I want to love something, it should be significant enough. Significant is, it does not mean that only I will love that is significant. If it is significant, by default, I will love it. So that is bhakti, and it is of 9 forms. And the knowledge of God is only gained through critical engagement using hermeneutical tools with Vedic text. So this is Shastra Yonikarana. In one thing I want to explicitly point out in Madhva's epistemology, he says, Nacha anubhavarode agamasya pramanyam. Agama is not pramana. Vedas are not pramanas if it contradicts one's empirical observation. Empirical observation, what he means here is that in Brahmasutra Bhashya, he has clarified Shastrartha Yuktanubhavaha Pramanam Tuttamam Matam. So Shastrartha Yuktanubhava, the experience, the empirical observation that is logically and supported by the Vedic texts. Okay, it's not just your own wisdom that is not corroborated by any other form of cognition. The cognition that is corroborated with other forms of cognition, including your own lingual cognition and inferential cognition, that experience, that is what he says when he says that Vedas do not contradict it. And that is what he means by philosophizing. That's perception, inference, and language, or the 3 testimonies that, like all other 7 schools of Indian epistemology, believes them as epistemic tools. So one experiences God by themselves. Initially, they need the help of the Vedic knowledge. Later, they experience themselves. That's the direct first-hand experience, the empirical connection with God, which we could see in Bhagavata Purana and other stories. And this emancipation is from the material bondage. The very important point of enlightenment that Madhva says, it's the subjective experience of objective reality. I do not have the time to experience this, explain this. So there are 15 bondage that are explained in Upanishad, which if the one soul releases from these, then the self is realized and unconcealed. So Vishnu is the focal principle. This is the last slide. I will quickly go through. So vidyate hridaya granti chidyante sarva samshayaha kshiyante chasya karmani tasmin drishte paravare. Here Madhva very also importantly pointed out, it is only the forms of deeds, karma, that is agami and sanchita, that is of the future and stored, they will perish, but not the prarabdha karma. So Madhva also, like other Vedantins, states that there is Jivan Mukti. So the one who has to exhaust their prarabdha karma, they will continue to live and give us, share their experience with us, the divine experience. So the God is the one who bestows wisdom to ignorant and freedom to wise, who Bhagavad Gita says, Samadukka Sukham Dhiram Somrtatvaya Kalpate, the brave, not the one with the muscular heroism. And he gives the bliss to freed. So this is very important in Madhva's thought system, is that even in moksha, each and after freedom, each and every individual is unique. They are distinct. They have their own unique, not even whether in samsara or in the emancipation, moksha, not a single thing is alike. They are extremely distinct. So in that sense, his universal categories are some sort of tropes, pratisvika dharma, and this I have already explained. So these are the Madhva's philosophical concepts. I have 2 minutes. So it's known as Tatva-vada. That is what Madhva calls, or even other Madhva followers call the school of thought, but it's also known as Dvaita Vedanta or Dvaita philosophy, in which Vishnu is supreme and his design, creation, universe is real and subservient, the entire dependent, it is subservient to it, but he is not creating something that did not exist. He just transforms from them, from their microform. Everything is unique, and yet graded does not mean that there is, it's a very critical concept. Experiencing oneself is what enlightenment, and that is only possible through devotion. And I have already spoken about others. The Vedas are impersonal statements, impersonal a priori. They exist prior to someone's experience. If they are not a byproduct or an outcome of someone's experience. The same Vedas are revealed by these scholars. So in that sense, Madhva says that the ideas, the knowledge, the entire knowledge that exists in the universe, also in one form or other form, it exists in the Vedas, and they are a priori in nature. So here I conclude. I thank the organizers for providing me the opportunity. I exceeded my time, and I'm really sorry for that.